I'm David Fehnel, born in Maywood, California, on August 11th, 1930. I lived there until my dad had asthma, and we had to move to San Bernardino, California. And he lived there until I got drafted. Uncle Sam said, "I want you." But I was working, I went through junior college and became a A&E mechanic, aircraft and engine mechanic. And I went to school, or went to work for this guy. It was a retired Army Air Force guy from World War II. And he said, I told him I got a letter from Uncle Sam, I got drafted. He said, "Tell your mother to send it back and don't open it." So I did. Mom sent it back. He says, "You go down and sign up with the Air Force, which is your career field, because you're working on airplanes." So I did. Went out and signed up for 4 years. And went through the same old thing. Went to San Antonio as a basic airman, which you get pictures there. And they made me go through A&E school again. I said, "I just went through that before I came into service." They said, "Oh, I don't care, you're going to go through the Air Force style." So, great. So I went through the Air Force, A&E school, did great. They promoted to me I was a corporal, from a private to a corporal. Great. Then we went off to school, finished school. They sent me to Roswell, New Mexico. You know where that is, I'm sure. In Walker Air Force Base. And was working on B-29s, World War II B-29s. And one day I was working on a squadron commander's airplane, and I said, "I want to go fly with you." He says, "You can't go fly because you're not, B-29 is pressurized." And I hadn't been through what they call the altitude chamber, where you get checked out with oxygen and breathing and all that. So about 3 or 4 months later, he came to me and he called me in the office and he handed me this piece of paper, which I think is still in another folder, but says, "Here, go to pilot training on your own, learn how to fly." So I said, "Okay." So I passed all the exams, got assignment to go to school, become an air pilot. Graduated in September 1953 as a second lieutenant, from an enlisted man to an officer. Anyway, went through it. And there was 2 groups of us, and I was the first one to solo. So I was stuck out like a thumb. Everybody knew me then. Great. But I went through that, and apparently they thought I was a pretty good pilot or something, so they made me an instructor. So I was an instructor for 3 years. That's when I got married. Like I said, I was telling you earlier that my wife liked that because when I was flying students, I was either working in the morning with them or in the afternoon, because they went to school in the morning, flew in the afternoon, and then the next week they went to school and then fly back and forth. So I was home quite a bit of the time. So she liked that. But like I say, when the tour and the training command was up, General LeMay says, you are going to go learn to fly my B-47. So I went off to school and learned how to fly a B-47. And that's when the Cold War was going on in 1960. I'm sure the 50s and 60s. And that's when we started putting airplanes on alert. The wing had 45 B-47s. There were 6 of them on home alert and 3 overseas and 3 on home alert. So anyway, it just got gold because it seemed like we were always on alert or gone. And that's why I say in 59, 60, 61, one night out of 5, that day I come home when the daughter says, "Some strange man at the front door." That really bangs you right in the head. So, and she decided it was the Air Force. I said, "No, let's get out." So went out. Went back to school. I only had an Associate of Arts, 2-year college. Went back to Northrop University in Inglewood, California, and got Bachelor of Science in Engineering. And the only place that was hiring back in 1961, 62, 63 timeframe was here at Uncle Mac's airplane factory. I call it Uncle Mac. So they were hiring, so I said, you ready to go back to St. Louis? So we come back. We were stationed in Lincoln, Nebraska. So I said, you ready to go back to the Midwest? She said, wherever. So we came back here. I worked there, like I say, for 22 years. And I did have American Airlines did send me a thing when I got out. You want to become an airline pilot? And she looked at me and said, no, you're not going to do that. Be gone all the time and all that bull again. Yeah. So, okay. Other than that, yeah, the Air Force was, like I say, I enjoyed that, learning to fly. In fact, the instructor I had, Joe P. Cunningham, I remember his name. He taught me how to fly the T-6. Anyway, it was a great time as a B-47. I was known as an aircraft commander, and I had a co-pilot and a bombardier navigator. And would you believe the size of bomb we had in the B-47? A 3.4 megaton bomb to deliver to Russia. And you know what size went off in Japan? 20 megaton or 20 kiloton, right? Multiply that by 3.4 megaton. You can imagine if Russia and the U.S. had decided to kick in, we probably all wouldn't be here today. I don't know. So, anyway, that's history gone. Yeah, it was not a bad life. In the service, I got to go. I had a navigator who was a Catholic, and we were off one week, and we wanted to go to Rome, see Pope John the 23rd, and he called him double X triple ace. I said, you're a good Catholic and you're calling your Pope double X triple ace? Anyway, history. We were all there when the Pope come out. He had come 2 or 3 extra rosaries that we held up for Catholics. All know about that, I guess, if you're Catholic. You know. But, yeah. I didn't mind working for Uncle Mac out here, but I met a guy that I didn't really like the job I had here when we come here. But I met an old timer that I knew very well, a good friend. And he said, you got to stick with it. He says he'd been at 3 different aircraft factories and they all folded up behind him. He said, I have no retirement because they take them away when you move and all that. He said, stick with it as long as you can. So, all right. So we did. 22 years, out. So then my dear wife and I decided we'd want to tour the lower 48. So we toured all the lower 48, every one of them. We didn't stay in every one every night, but most of them we stayed 1 or 2 nights and visited all the major parks, Yosemite and Yellowstone and all those places. Yeah, we enjoyed it. It was a good tour. And she loved to read, so going down the highway, anytime you saw a sign that said used books or something, we had to go there so she could go through used books. So, anyway, yep, I got a picture of my dad and my brother. I've got one brother is all, and he recently passed away here. That was it. The last of the family. My dad's gone, my mom's gone, now my brother's gone. I'm it. I'm ready. Good Lord willing to come and get me one of these days, huh? Anyway, what else?
Do you want to tell us about your wife? How you met?
Oh, okay. A blind date. And the first time we went out, we wouldn't pay much attention to each other. We were with another couple. And it was her girlfriend had talked to Patricia about going out with them that night. So I said, yeah. And I knew the guy that knew them. So, but, yeah. I just remember the first night wasn't much. So I hadn't talked to her, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks, I guess. And one day she called BOQ at the base where I was and said, what are you doing tonight? I said, nothing. She said, well, you take me to the movies? There was a drive-in movie in town, so, okay. So we went to the movie, and then we started going together more and more. So. And we decided, well, if we like each other, let's get married, okay? 60 years, almost 60 years. She didn't quite make 60. Yeah, she passed away in February, and if she'd have stayed until July, it would have been 60 years. So, like I say, we had a pretty good life. No complaints. So, we had our ups and downs for sure. And we moved in this place. We've been here 41 years. Living alone's not a lot of fun, but it's not bad for 5 years.
How about your children?
Number 1, number 2 boy is Mike. Number 3 is Chris. He lives up in Lincoln County, but Mike worked for Ericsson Telephone. You know about Ericsson Telephone, I guess? It's an early telephone company. You remember when the early cell phones come out? They were big things. And I'd always read that the thing that cancer would get if you held. Well, he was a manager at Ericsson, and he was working with that 8 hours a day or longer. And it got cancer all through the lymph nodes and all of that. And it got to him. And Chris, doing pretty good, I guess. He got married, and he's living out Winfield, I guess. Winfield or Monroe in that area. So he's doing what he likes to do. So and they're all getting up. Of course, she's retired now. He's going to probably be retired in the next 3 or 4 years. So anyway, all of Michael's kids all moved to North Carolina. That's where Ericsson was located. They all moved down there.
How many grandchildren do you have?
Grandchildren? 9 grandkids and 7 great.
You sound doofy. That's great. It's like, how many grandkids?
That would be cute.
I made me look surprised.
Yeah, you do.
I used to like to play golf. Like I said, the good buddy that made me stay here working at Mac, it was a club, and he let me join with them, and we used to go out and play the Florissant golf course here in Florida. Used to play there. It's not something to do. So, and I want to back up my dear wife, high school graduate, passed the CPA exam the first time, which is unknown of, I think. Yes, we need to include that in there. Yeah.
Very proud.
One time, it was a surprise. Even whether she was working, it comes as a surprise to those people, I think. So, Touche Roche. You ever heard Touche Roche? So it was downtown CPA firm. Well, when we moved in here, is the backyard. Lots of roses, and flowers, and all kinds of stuff. And that's basically, most of my time was spent out in the backyard. Except for, we wanted to travel the U.S. We did that. Strange thing about that is getting in and out of the car, carrying your stuff in the motel, that got a little old. So when we got back, we decided we'd want to buy a motorhome. So we bought a motorhome, 2006. And that's when I think, even my daughter said, that's when her mother started getting dementia a little bit. Because if you look at our bedroom here, it's a pretty good size. And on the motorhome, it's just a little old compact. And I think she got a little, because she used to get up during the night and open the windows, cold as it was. And we went down and visited her family. She had 2 brothers and 1 sister. Her sister's still living only on her side of the family. So, yeah, well, got to stick my foot in the Atlantic Ocean, stick my foot in the Pacific Ocean. And my dear old brother, we used to remember him for a while. We used to go to the mountains, and he had a toboggan. We'd go up and go toboggans, and we'd give up that. We'd go down to the beach and go swimming, all in one day. People used to say, "What'd you do?" We went toboggan in the snow in the mountains, drove out to the beach, and played in the beach. I used to tell my students when I was flying with them, there are no dumb questions, only dumb mistakes. Only no dumb questions, only dumb mistakes. So if you got a question, you better ask me. So if we're going flying and you don't know the answer, or we're saying you solo and you don't know the, 26 students graduated, so. And we only lost one that I know of. He had a good friend that was in the Army and was flying helicopters. And he was going to show him what a helicopter could do. They went up and threw a rotor blade, killed both of them. So he's the only one I know. Another story about the co-pilot. He was an ROTC graduate, so he only had 3 years to spend in the service. When he got out, he went back to North Carolina and was a disc jockey. And I got a letter from him one time. Dave, I didn't know a disc jockey made so much money sitting on their butt all day. He went back to school and became a professor at North Carolina University. Is it North Carolina or State of University? Anyway, one of the colleges, but he was a professor. And I hear from him every now and then still. Well, the email thing. And the navigator, he stayed in, went on a B-52 program. And the last letter I got from him, he says, Dave, this bomb in Vietnam, he says, we pick out a target and we start dropping 750-pound bombs. Just let them go. He said, it made him, he was a good Catholic, like I say, and it made him sick. He says, I don't know who we're bombing, who we're killing, or anything else. He said, we just pick out a target that assigned us and we start dropping bombs. I don't know how many 750-pound bombs B-52 could, but there were quite a few, I think. It made him sick. If you grew up with a kid, we were broke, depression. My dad worked for 10 cents an hour, 12 hours a day. And like I told him, when I grew up, he was off to work before we got out to go to school in the morning. And we were getting ready to go to bed at night when he came home. And he worked 6 days a week, 12 hours a day. So we didn't see much Pop all the time. But yeah, money was something. So I never had much money growing up, even when I went in the service. The $52 a month we got as a private, that was big money. But like I say, I met this troop out here at McDonald, and he says, you need to save money on your own. And he got me started in what they call a dividend reinvestment program. And I started out and started keeping money, and Patricia went to work, and we saved her money too. When my dad got asthma from working in the LA area, Maywood, he had to move out because he got asthma. And the doctor told him, you need to get out of the LA base to get to move higher ground. That's when we moved out to San Bernardino. And the only place was around it we could buy was it was put up during the WPA days, I think. It was a big, long chicken house. Living quarters on one end and a storage area in the middle and the 3 chicken coops out the other way. I keep saying, my brother says we only had about 700 chickens, but I always thought it was more. But he said, no, Dad. He said, only about 750, 250 in each one, the 3 coops. And we lived in the other end of the chicken house. That's where we went, all the way through. And we had chickens. And I ate eggs. Here's the story. I got up one morning. Mom used to fry eggs and bake them and all. And one morning I got up, you know the cupcake trays, you put a tissue. She cracked eggs and put them in and baked them. She handed me one, and I broke it open, and it was yellow and white. Mom, you didn't cook them enough. She went, but yes, if cholesterol, like I tell my daughter, if cholesterol, eggs and cholesterol, I want to kill you, I'd be dead, but because I had eggs. Another little story. We used to, the chickens that my brother and I go out, if a hen was laying an egg, we'd put a little band around their foot. And Mom and Dad used to go out in the chicken coop and would find any chicken that didn't have a band on. That was dinner. Dad decided it wasn't laying eggs, it's going to be in the... We had 5 acres of ground. My dad used to, we had a pig or two we moved there shortly after World War I started. We moved there in 1942, and I left home in 50. So we were living there all that year, so taking care of chickens. Like I say, we were working with Swift and Company, you know about them, of course, and they used to buy the eggs. And it got where the money that Dad got for the eggs wasn't paying for the amount of food we were feeding the chickens. He called them up and said, take the chickens out. And they've come and got all the chickens, hauled them all. Then come somebody else's dinner. We kept, I think in one coop there must have been a dozen chickens just for our own. And then we started raising pigs. We had a couple pigs. My brother and I used to love watermelon. We grew watermelons in the back 2.5 acres. We go out and just split them open. And the old watermelons with all the seeds, we just pick the heart out and eat that. Dad used to say, make sure you feed the rest of it to the pigs. So the pig got the rest of the watermelon, and we'd eat the heart out. And it was, you could take your finger and scrape all the, if you ever seen a regular watermelon, you know how all the seeds are. Yeah, we just eat that watermelon. And we tried selling watermelons one time, and nobody wanted to stop and buy watermelons. So my brother and I and the pigs, we got most of what the family, Mom and Dad always gave away watermelons too, but the family all had. Yeah. Another time, I worked for a service station. The old Navy guy got out of the Navy after World War II, and he bought a service station just across the street from where we lived. And he wanted somebody to help him out sometime because he wanted somebody to wash the windshields and check the air pressure in the tires and all that. So I learned how to do that. Pretty soon I'm working for him, and then I was working more and more on it. So. And I remember a story come in. He let me pump gas after 2 or 3 years working there. And this guy had a new car. And Walt was his name, and I forget the guy's name, but they were standing there. They said, hey, Dave, put some gas in my car. Okay. So I'm looking for the place where you put gas in this car. It's a new car. I look, usually it's behind the license plate, or these newer cars got a flip on. This was before that. It used to be behind the license. And I'm looking behind. I don't see any place to put gas in. And they're all over there laughing at me. So they finally come over. And would you believe, one of the taillights flip up. And the gas, where you put gas in, you flip the taillight up, open that, and put gas in there. Here I'm walking around looking for, and they're laughing at me. I think, what's going on? I remember that little tale. Another little tale, I belonged to Boy Scouts. And one year after the war was over, we're living in San Bernardino, where March Air Force Base had an open house for Boy Scouts and Air Scouts and stuff. So we went out there and spent a week acting like enlisted people. And they treated us like we ate in the mess hall, slept in the old barracks that were empty. And for the big thing, we got to go fly. An old C-47. And we each got to go up front and fly the airplane. That's where I think I got the idea. Because the guy that was sitting over, he let me, I was flying for 10 or 15 minutes. He looked at me and said, you're doing all right. So, except I acted a little, and my good buddies in the back were, who's flying now? Anyway, that was another storyline. I enjoy it. So I guess that's why I went on to be pilot training or something. Anyway, like I say, I worked for Uncle Mac out here. Then one time he sent me off to Douglas before we bought Douglas. They were building I think it's C-17, it's a cargo airplane, and we went out there to help them. And that was a pretty good tour. But then they put me on a Navy program, Air Force, Navy, and I on the Harrier, that lift airplane that Mac built with. And there's an East Coast Navy and there's a West Coast Navy. And they used to come in because they would work with us to decide who was going to do repairs on the Harrier. And a lot of times they'd ask the Mac people, please leave the room. And they'd get in our argue over who's going to get to repair this and repair that. And it got, working with them, I said, that's enough. So when my time with there, I said, I'm out. And I left. 22 years, so that was enough.
Talk more about your days in your you were in the Strategic Air Command yourself?
Yes.
And so what was a normal day like, or what was one of the more interesting episodes that you had with SAC?
I don't know. Just being on alert was a pain in the
Did you
rear.
ever get scrambled?
Oh, yes. Oh, well, wait a minute. Back up a little. There were 3 types of alert. The horn would go off and you all get out there and you report in to the control room and they say it's A alert. You just report in. Then there was a B alert where you went out and you started all the engines. All 6 engines go and report ready to taxi. And then we used to go out, there was a COCO alert. We'd taxi around the end of the runway and pull back in. Pull out the alert area, go down the runway, turn off, come back and park again. We used to wear a thing, as an aircraft commander, I had a thing around my neck. And the control room would give you a code, and if it matched that, then there was no stopping you. You were on your way to Russia. Thank goodness never matched. But yeah, and then we started doing reflex, what we call reflex. It was going to England. And there was 2 bomb wings over at England in Newbury Park area, just outside of London here. And on takeoff, one of them crashed into the neighborhood and killed a bunch of English people, plus all the crew and everything else. And I think the British decided they've had enough of you guys. So we went to Spain. And so we went from England to Spain. There are reflex aircraft. And when we first went to Spain, I couldn't believe the country over there. Poor country. These old mules pulling these guys behind plows, and their cotton was about this high. And when I was stationed out in Arizona cotton, pretty good high. It was just, for me, never being overseas. London, of course, England is like being in the States almost, but going to Spain was like night and day almost. And the first time we went over, there wasn't much construction going over, but about the 5th or 6th time we went over there, all these buildings going up. I figured, yeah, Uncle Sam is paying you guys big money to build all this stuff. So, and it was still in Spain. They let us, when we were, there was like, you'd be on alert 5 days and you were off 3 days, something like that. It was a routine. And when we were off for the 3 or 4 days, they let us go into town a lot of times. We went at an Air Force vehicle. Either we'd have a driver drive us in, or we could go ourselves if we had a government driver's license. Of course, none of our crew had. We always got a guy out of the carpool. But we'd go to town and we'd have lunch, and the Spanish girls with their clicker-clackers. That was something. Watching them dance and snap those. I forget what they're called, but.
Castanets.
And going to town, there's still the Spanish guys with the 3-corner hats or the gun. And if he says stop, the carpool driver knows you stop. Because if you go, you're going to get shot. So he'd stop, and the guy would come over, look in the car. He would just show him where we're past, where we're American citizen or something. He'd say, okay, he'd wave us on. And there's big old. We didn't mess with them. I first learned to fly the T6. My instructor said, okay, you're ready to go. So pulled in after I flew that day, and the same airplane I was strapped in. He got out, said, stay up for about 30 minutes and come back. So, okay. So I took off. And I'm up flying around, just getting the feel of it on my own. And back up a little bit. When we used to, who was going to control the air, he'd shake the stick. And he'd know that we could transfer. And he'd shake it, and he'd want control. So we'd let go, and I'd just raise my hand and say, okay, it's yours. And he'd shake it, and I'd shake it back and let him know that, yeah, I've got it. And when I'm up flying all alone, mind you, the stick starts shaking. I mean, really shaking. And I thought, oh, you didn't get out after all, did you? And I turned around and looked, no, he's not there. And I'm thinking, the good Lord just signed me a guardian angel. I flew around for another 15 minutes, and the stick shook again. I'm thinking, there's no other aircraft, and there's no turbulence in the air because it's calm as all get. And I'm thinking, all right, the good Lord's assigned me a guardian angel. And would you believe, the only one time I had any trouble with an aircraft, we lost an engine, or didn't lose it all the way, but it started acting up on us. So we turned around, and she remembers this story. When I went through Vegas after graduating, I went through Vegas just to be there. And I saved a couple of silver dollars. And I was flying with them all the time. And when I got back, I emptied my flying suit out, and there was only one silver dollar. So I had to look all over the sofa, and I found the other one. And I thought, the good guardian angel, or the silver dollar, which one of you failed me? But yeah, I got going on something over 7,000 hours, close to 8,000 hours of military flying time. So, and we could come home. We'd meet. When we first started flying, we had KC-97s. I know you're probably familiar with all the tanker aircraft, and they're a prop-driven airplane, and they could do maybe 220 knots along. And our stall is about 210 knots in the B-47. So when we had to refuel behind them, they'd have to start going down so they could accelerate and we could stay up with them. And then we got the KC-135, which is the present day tanker. And they could go off and leave us. But yes, my best time refueling was about 11 minutes, offloaded 40,000 pounds of fuel. Normally it was about 15 or 20 minutes to unload that, but I don't know why we were in a hurry. And sitting in that aircraft seat for 13, 14 hours. At least we had an autopilot. You just let airplanes. And the co-pilot used to shoot stars, or usually in the daytime it was the sun. We used coming home, it was in the daylight. We used the sun lines to fly home. North Atlantic, crossed over, I don't know how many times. Like I told the crew, I said, I can't swim. I said, if we're going down, I'm sticking with the airplane. You guys can bail out. We had a little life birds that we set on it flying, but I said, I can't swim, and I'm not going to walk around that cold water in the North Atlantic. I said, I'm just going to go in with the airplane, the heck with it. But we never had to do that, so thank the good Lord, my guardian angel. Yeah, well. To back up even, you like stories, I guess. When I graduated from pilot training, I wanted to go see an old friend of mine that didn't get drafted. He got married since he wasn't drafted. So I wanted to go see him. And I had to go through Las Vegas. He lived up in southern Utah area. And went up and saw him coming back home. I had a few bucks left over, so I paid the motel bill, filled the gas tank up in the car so I could get all the way. And walking around Las Vegas back in those days, this is back in 1954, it was something. It was people all over the place. So anyway, walking down and it says bingo. So I walked in and started playing bingo. Started earning money playing bingo. These girls pay you in silver dollars is all they had. Of course, you'd have to give them 1 or 2 back for checking make sure you were actually a bingo. But I walked out with about 50 or 60 silver dollars in my pocket. I'm going to give Robbie gets about 5 or 6 of them that I kept over the years, and my other boy Chris, he gets the other 5 or 6. So, and I give Gregory's little baby Eleanor over there a 1883 silver dollar, pretty good shape. So I told him save it for her when she gets to be 21. It ought to be worth a few bucks. So.
Tell me more about the times that you were flying. You flew, you were actually in the air for 13 hours.
Oh yeah.
So
well,
you take off with a bomb?
No. When we were going reflex, we were empty. The bombs were already loaded. Excuse me. When we went empty with just a few load is all we had when we were over. And they'd load the weapon in the aircraft, like in Spain or England, that was loaded while we were there. And when we first got there, of course, after flying over, you got to sleep the first couple of days. And then we went on alert. We were on alert for like 5 or 6 days straight. Same old thing, A, B, C. But we never did taxi over there. Just report in that we were ready to start. I don't know why, I guess because the fuel truck had to come out and top you off. And they but, yeah, we'd leave Spain. Start engines usually about 30 minutes before takeoff. You're sitting in that thing starting engines. Then you fly over, you get refuel, then you fly on to Lincoln, Nebraska. There's always at least 13 or 14 hours sitting in that seat. Of course, we had flight lunches we could eat. Never did. And it was usually fairly clear because we're flying at a pretty good altitude. Once in a while it was in, there's usually 3 aircraft, and the navigator always kept track of anybody in front of us or anybody behind us. So, and we could all talk to each other because we're all on the same channel. So. But flying from the east to west, you've got a headwind. You probably heard about that. So it's always a little longer to get from Spain to Lincoln. And like I say, if we got a tanker, it's usually about 13 hours, unless the high winds at altitude weren't that strong. Sometimes, but most of the time you could almost figure 13 hours at least. Time you got landed and parked and climbed out of that bucket. And if we didn't get a tanker, we had to go into Goose Bay, Labrador and refuel. And I remember one time, it was so cold, minus 37 degrees. When we landed, they refueled us. But then our number 1 and 6 engines had what they call an alternator on it, oil-driven type of generator. And the oil congealed enough that I couldn't get that engine started. And we tried and tried and tried. They put the heater on it, tried to heat it up. Finally, burn up the starter. They said, you guys are going to have to spend the night. So, okay. So they had to tow our bird down to the hangar to change that engine. And we spent the night. The aircraft wasn't ready to go the next day. So this one crew chief, I don't know, I think the navigator, the co-pilot knew him or somebody knew him, took us to town. And I bought that hat. It's a great hat. And it was cold that night. Minus 37. There was a story going around that one of the pilots, air defense type guys, had put a bottle of whiskey in the window and it got cold. And I don't know if it's true or false or otherwise, but he come back and after flying, he took a slug out, froze his. It was, liquid cold almost from being out in the window. And that was the story that was going around there for a while. Yeah, we only stopped in Goose Bay, what, 3, maybe 4 times, I guess. Most of the time it was, we get refueled and we take right back off again. Because your tanker didn't get off from the east coast there. It was supposed to come out and meet us, refuel, and we'd go all the way. But sometimes they had trouble with their aircraft and we didn't get a tanker or something. So, and being the junior birdman the first couple of years, we were always selected to go into Goose. Because the major I flew with, he had the right of way. He was your turn to go into Goose Bay, Dave. So, but like I say, most of the time we got in and we refueled and we get right back off. But we were behind. The rest of the crew were already home by the time we got there. Well, Germany makes some pretty good stereo. And it was new in the country here pretty much back in those days. So the PX used to get them in every now and then, and if you got your name on there, you could get one. And we, like I say, we're coming back from Spain or wherever we were. There was room in Bombay because they used to put a platform in there so you could store your luggage and whatever, because you didn't have enough room in the cockpit for all that junk. So yeah, we put a crew chief would store one of those things in there for it. You know, heard about the Autobahn.
Tell us about it.
Speed limit unlimited. And we rented a Volkswagen, the old Volkswagen buses. People honking. Get over, move over. We're in almost the right lane anyway most of the time. And these guys going zip, zip, zip. Still honking at it. Get out of there. You're not supposed to be on the Autobahn, I guess, not all beat up. But yeah, I forget one of the other co-pilots, the aircraft commander was flying. He said, "I've got it wide open now." Floorboard and everything, we go around here.
How would you like to be remembered?
I have no idea. Oh, okay. The only Fehnel that ever flew. My dad said, told me way back when, he says, none of our family ever was flown. He said, you're the only member that ever went to pilot training and learned how to fly. So, okay. So he said, you're the only member that ever become a pilot. So if anyone wants to remember, they can remember I was a pilot one day.